Okay, ready?
But you don't have to say ready. Just fucking say it.
Okay, welcome back to the matinee.
It gets...
Welcome back, Mom.
Welcome back.
I mean, lioness.
Yeah.
Kate's got to add another animal to the picture now because this is your episode.
God damn it, well, now I know what I need to do. God damn it.
What, are you going to sit here and draw it while we're recording?
You probably. Making some multitasker over there.
So, we're talking about Carl Großmann.
Carl Großmann.
He was a Großmann.
I will say, at first I thought it was Carl Grobman, maybe because of the spelling of the double S.
Yeah, the double S in German is the funky looking B.
Right. And then I was like, wait a minute, is this the same person? And sure enough, it was. So it's Carl Großmann. Sometimes they pronounce it different. But he was alive and around the same time era as Papa Denke.
Really?
Same place in Prussia. He had his date of birth. He was born December 13th, 1863.
Okay, so yeah,
In a Roman
Denke
kingdom of
was
Germany,
1860.
Prussia. Yeah. He went by a couple of AKAs, Jack the Slaughterer or the Berlin Butcher. Now, I will say this. I found this kind of funny, and I'm going to mention it just because there is nowadays an actual 5-star restaurant over there called The Butcher Berlin. So it's not the same.
We're not talking about the restaurant.
We're not talking about the restaurant.
The restaurant does not do these things.
No.
I mean, they might. Who knows?
Stop. Be nice.
I'll be pessimistic this whole time.
I
don't
know.
worry.
There's not much known about him. There's no history written down about him, his childhood, what he went through. It basically all starts, he was drafted into the Army in World War I. He was discharged medically. Again, we don't know the years.
Information lost to time.
It's almost as if, like, everything got fucking blown up over there between, like, 20
Crazy,
years.
crazy
Concept. They said he
War destroys information. Amazing concept.
Whoa, it's
Yes.
almost as if, like, again, everything got burned.
Right. And he kind of did wander about. He was employed as a butcher. Worked a couple odd jobs at farms, and it was a desolate time. He did not like working. He would rather beg for his money. He was known as the beggar.
He wanted the handout.
He wanted the handout. Sorry about that. I gotta
It's so cute. She's got all these notes that she's just furiously flipping through.
Okay, so he did own a brat hot dog stand, which he kept by the railway, and he would sell brats to everybody. Now, it is not proven he was a cannibal, and they kind of like the telephone line, the story very well. But it is rumored that he killed at least 50 plus people, women.
Oh, okay.
Women. They
Okay.
were all women. He was very, very, had very sadistic sexual tastes. Before he was actually caught, he had molested 3 young girls. And these 2 were like 10 and 11. They survived. Oof. And then one of them was between 7 and 9, who later died from her injuries from him raping her. And he did do 15 years in prison for that. And he had been charged with bestiality a couple of times, with sheep.
He was a horny man.
He was... his name suits him.
Yeah.
For sure. He had been arrested 25 times before he was actually, caught the second time.
Okay.
For prison. He actually rented an apartment, like, in a really decrepit, bad part of town. Back then, it was right after World War I. It was called the Weimar period, where there was like 4 little coalitions that said, we're going to run this place. And it was right before the rise of Hitler. And heavy, heavy rationing of meat. He would sell meat on the black market a lot, along with begging. and then have the
The
hot
fact
dog
that there's a
brat
black
stand.
market for meat.
Right.
There's a black market for anything.
I know there's a black market for anything, but like
for beef and shit.
with what she's talking, I mean, with all the rations because of the war, it was like you could go to jail forever for a steak, like a beef steak.
I want
Right.
a 16
Or a
sirloin.
chicken.
Sir, you're going to jail.
Yep.
This
Yep.
is a raid.
Right. And
Quick, hide the fucking pastrami.
he wasn't actually that poor. He made a lot of money selling meat on the black market, working his, I call it a hot dog stand, bratwurst stand, and enough to where he could bring a prostitute home every night, heavily drunk
Okay.
after
Oh yeah,
the bar.
because he'd give her a different type
Every
of
night.
brat.
He had built a separate door on the back of his apartment, which he had to have built stairs. I don't.
Is it a hoe door?
It is a hoe door. If he came home with a prostitute, they would come in through the back, but people
them
never
the
really saw
bratwurst.
anybody leave.
Give him
He
the bratwurst
also
and turn him into bratwurst.
women who were not prostitutes, he would ask them, "Hey, I need a maid. Would you come work for me?"
Okay.
And they were never seen again.
Huh.
So
Did nobody get suspicious yet?
no, because the neighbors back then, if they heard women screaming or they heard like a domestic situation, the police did nothing about it. Nothing about it. The women had no rights back then. It was like, nope, it's
Well, I
not
mean,
worth
they
our
also
time.
lived under the kind of unspoken rule that like what a man does in his own household is that man's business
Right,
and only
right.
his business.
Okay.
And his landlord lived upstairs from him.
Really?
Yes. And she just kind of kept her, he always paid his rent on time. He actually lent some money to some other tenants. I will get into that in a little bit. Who actually, turned around and got him caught.
Good.
So,
We don't like your bratwurst anymore.
yeah.
I don't like the bad guys.
For some reasons unknown, he just started killing. I mean, because there's no backstory on him. Maybe it was always something in there. Maybe it was the
Okay.
times, the time of maybe it was PTSD from the war. Maybe it
Okay.
was a lot of different things. But I don't even think that would cause you to kill and quote unquote be a cannibal. It was never proven, but it was
Okay.
never disproven. Kind of like the Karl Denke. It was never kind of proven. But
It was,
not
it was,
disproven.
yeah, it was never proven that he did it himself.
Well, I mean,
but
if he's
but there's a
selling
high
shit on the
likelihood
black-
There's
that
a high
he
likelihood
forced
that
other
this-
people
yeah,
that were
yeah.
unawares.
I have there's lists of names. Okay, so what he would do, the police were finding body parts that were unrecognizable. They couldn't. Well, back then they couldn't determine who they were.
But they
But
could
they were
tell
also
that they
parts-
were people parts.
Yes,
Okay.
parts of women, and
Oh,
and they
my
were
goodness,
also
oh, fucking cow.
parts that you wouldn't think would be edible. So the scraps
Okay.
of what he might have been doing. He would throw them into, I have it here.
Furiously flipping through the notes.
Yes, I am, because now I can't find it.
That's why you leave the notes in the notebook.
I know.
And you number them if you take them out.
She
of the
did
book.
number them.
Did she?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh,
He-
shit.
They'd find him in a canal near the Andreas Square.
That's where they're finding these body parts?
That's where they're finding
Okay.
these bodies, in the canal and off the Lewisenstadt Canal on a daily basis.
Okay.
They would find these. It is rumored that he killed 50 plus women up to near 100.
And just dump the scraps
And
there
dumped the
every
scraps.
day.
They were finding them body parts every single
And
day.
nobody was getting like suspicious of anything and thinking maybe I should just hang out here and wait for him to drop him off. Like,
Yeah, nobody. No, the police were like running around frantically.
Nah, I don't think we'll
Yeah, they were like, oh, we got all these women missing. What's going on? But they weren't really thorough with it.
Okay.
And they were kind of thorough with it.
But then again, they're like, it's just
Yeah, it
women
wasn't-
missing.
Yeah,
No, if it were a man.
there was so much other stuff going on in that era that it was kind of like
it was low priority.
you're right. It was kind of like put down on a note saying this is what's happening. You couple can go here while the rest.
Oh,
Well,
no,
he's only killing hookers, so is it really
Right.
that bad of a crime?
Exactly.
Like,
That,
for
exactly.
us.
Exactly. He did finally get arrested. the neighbors would constantly complain that there was a bad smell coming from his apartment.
Oh, so we got Jeffrey Dahmer.
And he would tell them, oh, a chicken got left out on the windowsill.
Well, Jeffrey Dahmer.
Jeffrey Dahmer.
And they kept believing him. Mind you, he lent them money. He dressed nice.
He was another. It was just like you were saying when you suggested that one of us do the Karl Denke one. It's literally like a copy paste situation that was happening pretty much at the same time.
Right, and I think he's only like 5 or 6 years younger than Karl Denke was.
3 years.
3 years.
You said he was born in 63.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, 3 years younger.
So I'm wondering if it was like, did they live near each other?
Did some of the victims overlap?
Right.
Like somebody got blamed for.
They had a fucking like conference.
It's entirely possible that maybe Karl Denke only killed 30 people, and all the other bits and pieces that they were like freaking out about.
What if they were selling to each other through the black market?
They very well could have been swapping recipes.
I'll give you the letter from mine, and
Swapping
you can give me...
recipes.
Oh, you have all this leather? I'll take out this leather, and then you're just like. Like they're just swapping like the skin. He's like, I'll give you more of the meat if you like. If you
It might have,
skins."
because Carl Großmann was caught, apprehended in August 21st of 1921.
Okay, so he was 3 years younger, but he was 3 years early on getting caught.
Right. And the only reason why he was caught was because he was these neighbors next to him that he had lent money to. December 1920, a young woman known as Melanie Sommer, Sommer,
Okay.
she vanished. She had come to town, and it was known that she was kind of like a prostitute looking for, and he brought her back to the house. And he kind of like, while he was bringing all these people to the house, the neighbors were noticing, saying they're not leaving. But no one ever did anything. They were noticing the women weren't coming out. Mm-hmm. No one ever did anything, and the maids were vanishing and stuff like that. And he would go to the police when these women would be missing, and he would complain because saying she was my maid and she robbed me and left. And the police believed him.
Well,
they believed him. They believed everything. So,
some gullible ass cops in Prussia in the early 1900s.
Okay, we will play the name game. He was 55 when he was finally caught.
Okay.
His last murder involved a 35-year-old Marie Teresia Neitsch. Neitche.
Damn.
Neitsch.
Marie Teresia Neitsch.
Niche, probably.
It's on the second to bottom, right by my thumb.
Niche. I think you were right, Ari.
Niche.
I mean, we could get Drew's input since, you know...
Well, he was born in Germany, but he moved out of Germany before he knew words, so...
Or it's like Niesh. Because it looks like Niet.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Prussia was sort of like Russian-ish.
Yeah, it was
like Russian
and
Germany,
definitely,
like...
yeah. And the Weimar period only lasted a couple of years. I mean, it was so terrible there.
We can see what Google says, later.
So she was like in her 40s. She had just gotten out of jail for a month. And he picked her up, and
I'm assuming she was probably in jail for prostitution then.
Yeah, it kind of didn't really say what she was in jail for,
it's
but I'm assuming...
It's a pretty safe assumption at this point, I think.
Yeah. Okay, his neighbors, we got to play the name game again. Mannheim and Helen Itzig, Itzig, Itzig.
Sounds about right.
Yeah.
They're the ones that he lent money to. And they actually heard a woman screaming and a lot of banging, and then they heard nothing. So prior to hearing the nothing, they actually bored a hole into his doorway.
Oh.
And they were looking through his door, peeping through this hole in his door. And they could see him.
How do you not notice that your neighbors are sitting there fucking drilling a hole into your apartment?
He was obviously otherwise occupied.
He was occupied. Yeah. It says that he slipped her some. I think one report said cyanide, but I don't know how you can use cyanide and not kill somebody, because she was obviously. He said some victims he would drug and then rape them and then
some milk of the poppy and
butcher them.
Right.
It is rumored that, like I said, he had 50 plus. Other places said 100 plus, just because of the amount of bodies that were coming up.
Right.
And so they ended up calling the police, and the police came down, caught him in the act of cutting up this lady on his bed. And they could tell that there had been at least 4 other victims by blood stains on the wall. And he also kept a diary of every crime he had ever done.
What's the fuck up with these men, like, keeping... today I murdered this person.
Okay, I mean, psychologically, it's pretty likely that they wanted to make sure that their legacy was remembered.
Yeah.
Men like that always have
He
some type
did
of an ego
Some
about them.
superiority complex, for sure.
Yeah, he did confess to killing 20 women over 20 years. And it is rumored to be way, way more.
Yeah, there's no
I mean,
way.
there was more than
Especially
20
with
women
how
found in
often they were finding body parts down there.
If he was able to go dump bodies, like, almost every single day, there's no way Homeboy was only doing 1 a year.
And that almost, someone had to have seen him dump at least 1 body in there, and they just go about their business because
It was probably homeless people, and they knew if they do anything,
Nope,
they were all going to be
all.
the ones in
They were
jails.
desolate women looking for work. I don't like the word desolate. They were just, going on through a hard time, needed to make some money, so they go and, I'll be your maid.
It was a lot more common back then, and it was a very quick way to get sucked into like an indentured servitude sort of thing, because it's like, well,
Right.
you're living in my house, you have to do what I say.
Right. Right. There was one woman, I couldn't find her name, but she did go in and she took one look around. There are some photos of his apartment on YouTube. That's where mainly the information is. There's a couple of shorts on there. And she took one look around there and said, nope, not doing it. See you later, and left. And that saved her
I'm
life.
not going to be able to get these stains out on
Obviously.
Right.
She just had that gut feeling, and it's not worth
And it probably saved her life.
It did.
Follow your gut, people.
Yeah.
If only that one girl
Definitely
that I
follow
did on
your
this-
gut.
What was it, the first episode where this dude convinced her to go and let him wash her hair.
Oh, yeah.
And she just didn't follow her gut, and then she just stayed.
Wow.
Yeah. Like,
That's-
oh, he's washing my hair. Oh, I took a nap. Oh, let me wake up. Oh, now we'll being strangled.
Yeah, that was kind of strange. That was
Very.
really
Like,
definitely
I mean,
kind
he-
of
Wasn't
strange.
that over in Germany too?
Yeah.
What the fuck, Germany?
It was.
Germany's a little fucked up, okay?
I mean, thousands of years of war over the same situation over in that country with Poland
Right.
and Russia and
Right.
yeah. Okay, so when they did finally arrest him, I mean, because the evidence is right there in front of him, right?
I swear, officer, it's not what you look at. What it looks like.
Hacksaw in
She's
hand.
just taking a
yeah.
nap, right?
I'm just doing surgery.
His trial began July 2nd in 1922, and the prosecution actually had 17 witnesses to testify.
But nobody spoke up soon enough to stop him?
Nobody spoke up soon enough. I mean, nobody spoke up at all until that hole was drilled in his door,
Yeah.
and his landlord did call the police, and the neighbors were looking through the hole. Well, I think the neighbors were looking through the hole and screamed up to the landlady to call the police because of what they saw. I mean, there's not much information. It's just lost.
Can you imagine how fast Jeffrey Dahmer would have been stopped if that neighbor lady would have just kind of punched a hole in the wall and been like, while he was away at work?
How could he not know that there was a hole in his wall or not hear a hole being? He must have really been into what he was doing if he was.
Either he was really aggressively beating her to death or he was really aggressively raping her, but clearly he was distracted.
He did.
And I mean, with
screams
with
and
those hand drills, you can go surprisingly quietly with those.
I didn't even think of that. Yeah, because he was. They heard the screaming and a lot of times like the police, they didn't respond to those types of things. So why would they call?
Right.
But not seeing the women come out ever,
of fishy.
Kind of fishy.
Yeah.
So there's 17 witnesses to testify. The lady's name that said she wasn't going to do it. Her name was Erica. That's all they give is her name was Erica.
Okay.
And she had went to the apartment, found it gross, and refused. Some women had escaped, but they didn't bring, this. I'm assuming that would have been the 17 witnesses that they were
Okay.
bringing in. The long story short, these people came in to testify, and the judge, it was a quick sentencing. The judge said...
I mean, they found him doing the deed.
They found him doing the deed. He knew he was
Right.
caught. He knew about his diary back then. He did confess to the 20 murders. They sentenced him to death. And he just laughed. That was he laughed about it.
Of course.
And before the death sentence could be carried out, he hung himself in his jail cell.
Man, what's up with these fucking cannibals?
Right.
The same as
do
Papa
that shit.
Denke.
That's insane. And the crazy thing is the Papa Denke photo and the Carl Großmann photo are two of the only ones that are actually photos of the people.
Right.
Because there's so few photos of them in general that it would be hard to come up with a really good AI generated something.
Yeah.
So these ones are originals.
They are originals. And they also, Carl Großmann, they said that he was described as he wore an oversized suit. It was a little body in an oversized suit.
You can
all
see
the
that
time.
in the picture, and it's only a headshot, but you can you can see looking at it that he's just a really gross man.
He is. He is. I mean, the bestiality, the molestation. He did 15 years in prison, and to come out and go, okay, I'm going to sell meat on the black market. And, they were finding the body parts that were non-edible,
Well, I mean, none of it's edible.
Right, well, you know what I mean. Oh. Okay, yeah. Yeah, I guess I could have worded that differently.
Not processable.
Not processable. That's a good way to put it.
It's probably not even really a word, but that's what we're going with.
Right. Yeah, it was 3 days of witnesses, and he just laughed and then ended up hanging himself. And personally, I think he should have been put in a firing squad or...
I think that they should, in cases where they know beyond a reasonable doubt, like, we caught this motherfucker doing this... When they're like, hey, we're gonna sentence you to death, it shouldn't be a wait thing. It should be like, okay,
shouldn't be a wait thing.
Judge bangs the gavel, and then they just take him out in the backyard.
Take him out, right, and or even to leave him with something that he could hang himself with. But back then, I don't really think. Oh, he hung himself. We don't have to do it.
Yeah, saves a bullet, I guess.
Yeah. So it's
we
just.
didn't have to spend any money on this. Kind of convenient.
Yeah, I did.
That's one way to look at it.
Don't you just love it when the trash takes itself out?
Yes. Actually, I do. But, yeah, the government for Germany from that 1919 to 1933, there was basically no government. The police were running around
It's the only reason why
not knowing what's going on. There were 4 serial killers. Karl Denke and Carl Großmann were 2 of them in that era, in that time period.
Yeah.
So they must have been completely overwhelmed.
Oh, definitely.
Who's doing this with the bodies? Is it? They didn't know.
Was it your guy or my guy?
Right.
In cases like this, it makes me really surprised that it took until the 1970s or early 1960s to late, early. Fuck, I can
60s
speak.
to 70s.
60s to 70s for the term serial killer to be termed.
Right.
But there was clearly fucking they were rampant.
The crazy thing is, we were just saying how serial killers are pretty much not really able to be a thing. You're gonna see more mass killings than you are serial killers now because you
can't get away with it.
Obviously, they were heavily relying on the panic of the police to do 90% of their cover-up work for them. They had to do very little lying to be believable.
Yeah, I mean, the only way someone would be able to pull that off nowadays is if they live in the middle of nowhere. And I mean nowhere and are pulling in travelers.
So Alaska?
And just... No, not necessarily. I mean, there's the whole of Canada that's not... Yeah. But then, people wouldn't be coming by to do that too.
Since Joan of Arc type times, because Joan of Arc's best fucking friend was a very interesting person that tortured and killed a whole lot of boys when he was in the war with her.
Yeah, I guess, with the it was never, like I said, never proven he was a cannibal, but it was highly thought. Yeah.
That or he was just killing him and just selling the meat. I feel like he would probably have been the one to just be selling the meat.
Yep.
I feel like
that's how he made all his money.
It could be kind of like Karl Denke, where he had to have at least tried it a couple of times.
Yeah.
To make sure that other people would spend money on it.
Be able to not notice the difference, yeah.
And also it makes you kind of think, and I know this may sound very twisted, but during that time where poverty was, not what we know of poverty, it was way worse. Maybe they just, meat was meat. Yeah. It's sad to say that, but at that time.
What was it, that soccer team in the Andes? They ended up having no choice to survive,
right.
kind of thing. And
it is a survival.
I've been wanting to do that case. Have you seen the pictures from that? Because they found a camera, and they were all taking pictures, and there's literally a picture of all of them sitting outside that plane, and in the little corner, there's literally just a human's, spine that is picked clean.
Is that?
Just sitting there.
Is that an actual true story?
Yeah, the soccer team that
there is a
crashed in the
series
Andes.
out about that.
There's a series, and then there's, 2 movies made.
Yeah, so Carl Großmann, his name does define him. He was a really gross man, and he was just nasty. Nasty man that got away with murder until he didn't.
It's another crazy case where, the nicest guy in town is the one that's killing everybody.
Right. the guy to go to if you're hard out and you're lucky and you need some extra cash, and he was willing to give it to you.
It's insane.
It is.
Definitely insane.
So that was my case. Hope I did well.
I think you did just fine. And at this point, people should, the people that followed us on social media, we got rid of the social media. It was stressing me out. Social media stresses me out. And yeah, and Kate's Kate. Bye.
Bye.